Our neighborhood isn't the best neighborhood.
Lower East Side.
We have come to CBGB's here in the Lower East Side.
It's not really
tough out there.
Yeah.
It's a working class movement that's politically aware. I enjoy the style, I enjoy the music.
So now, without further delay, from the streets of New York,
it's the Just Say No generation, and these straight-laced teens are here at CBGB's.
And having an authentic hardcore show.
From New York City! Yo, New York, you remember what time it is?
So when did Sane start getting into punk rock, like the New York hardcore scene?
You know, I think that was more when he went to Hunter, where he went to high school. Because that was his surroundings, because in the Heights, it's basically all Hispanics and few blacks, but it was all Hispanics. So when he was around there, he was listening to hip hop because that's what his surroundings. But then when he got into Hunter, I think his surroundings changed to more people that, you know, listen to that type of music. So he got open to doing that.
When hardcore music started, 80s, 70s, 88, that's when he became aware of it, and that's when he played it in the house. Music for me was kind of secondary. I listened to whatever he listened to.
Oh, New York hardcore. Bands like Nausea that are New York hardcore. And then you've got, you know, of course, your big four, which, you know, Agnostic Front, Cro-Mags, and Murphy's Law, and some would say New York Bad Brains, even though they're from DC.
There is a band here called Agnostic Front. What is the music about? How is it different from other music?
Well, the thing is, the music, it's like, it's very powerful. It's got a lot of anger in it, you know?
What are you angry about?
Just what anyone else is angry about, you know? Frustration in life, but you vent it through the music.
We just speak of social unrest, conflict of interest, which in turmoil brings, you know, controversy.
I played in a ton of bands. Anybody who knows my name knows what bands I played with. I met Sane through a woman that I was involved with. They went to school together. Him and this woman were really good friends. They were in a lot of classes together. They're very, I mean, she's friends with like everybody. She's just an awesome person. And Sane was kind of an outlier in the hardcore scene. He would go to shows like anybody else. He just loved it. He loved the music.
We want to be known for wanting to make some changes. We're not all extremists on the left or extremists totally on the right. I have to say, we may veer a little more in the middle. Look at this right here. Let me tell you.
I can't speak for everybody, but a general idea I got is that we're like all American. And when you get into right wing and left wing, you get into politics and you'll always argue that point. Yeah. I mean, a lot of us, I think, are proud to live in America.
I'm an American, first and foremost.
The high school that he went to was like, it was an arts high school, and a lot of kids were involved in like the punk scene and the hip hop scene. He loved the vibe. There was a lot of the people that, like I said, there was a lot of kids in the hardcore scene.
And I wasn't really, I had no problem with him listening to it, whatever. He knew I was all hip hop, so that was my world. But then when he got into Hunter, I think that became his world and he got more into it.
I knew that David was going to the Hunter High School, which is one of those schools that you have to pass tests to get into. So I knew he was very smart, and I saw from his work he was very talented.
So Peter, is it your view that the bright kids are attracted to hardcore?
In a surprising amount of cases, yeah. It is the kids, what they seem to have in common is that they can't or won't fit in. In a lot of cases, that's going to entail the smartest kids in the class.
Monica had already been at Hunter the year before, and that actually was a fortunate turn of events in the elementary school. They were both going to 173 in the neighborhood, and lucky for us, they were progressive teachers who encouraged the children to take the test. And so the first year, Monica was able to get into Hunter, and the very next year, David also was able to get into Hunter. So at the time, there were only 2 children from each school would get into Hunter, and half of them were mine, which was kind of interesting. But I was very happy and lucky that this happened, and obviously I supported them, and you know, glad to be in Hunter.
Dave and I just hit it off, and we had a lot of like ideas and concepts in common. We got really into places where we could bring buckets and set up like, you know, all-day campaigns, like the Williamsburg waterfront back in like 88, 89, into the early 90s. I was telling you before, it was a scrapyard for where they would bring stolen cars and just dismember them. And the only cops you would see down there were like the cops who were down there trying to get the VIN numbers off the stolen cars. And they would hang out and just talk with us while we were like, we'd go down there with a pack of kids, and we'd bring a cooler, a bunch of 40s, we'd do deli runs and just make a day of it and just blow out these whole walls. And it was really cool because you didn't have the pressure of like, okay, you gotta have a lookout and be worried about like you go into a layup like 175th.
After Sane graduated high school, he moved out of his mother's apartment in Washington Heights and he moved to Queens. He also got a job. Out of all things he could have done, he was a token clerk with the MTA. Many years in the future, Smith would also get a job with the MTA. It's very ironic. Aside from picking up a 9-to-5, he also started getting more into arts.
ABC No Rio, the place deserves some support. That's why we're all here right now, right?
I think at the time ABC No Rio was like an alternate cultural center. I'm not exactly sure what went on there.
You're about to show me the front of ABC No Rio, which I don't even remember what it looks like. Oh, fuck yeah. Wow.
There was hardcore shows, I believe, and poetry readings, and they had a gallery there.
Did Sane take this picture? That shit's just fire.
So somehow Sane got connected to this guy, and he was like, yeah, sure, you guys can do a show.
ABC No Rio was a community center that used to be an after-hours drag bar back in the day. Sane knew the person who was the curator there that was doing art shows, who asked him if he would do the front mural, a legal storefront piece. So we went down and did it, and it was funny. We went down there, and we did the mural on the front. Then we started doing stuff in the back. And the coolest thing about it was the backyard. All these really now classic, now gone pieces that he had done that were out there in the backyard that they had basically made as a chill space. And I thought that was my favorite part of it.
This is a famous picture. Everyone's seen that one a lot. This is his first show that he did. He invited me to his first art exhibit. Believe it or not, this is the first time he ever wanted to be go in that lane. This is some of his sketches. A picture right here of what the trains look like. That's Dave's. That's Sane right there.
Unfortunately, I never really did artwork, so I never got caught up in that. Sane that was his idea, so he went with it. And he knocked out a bunch of paintings. He did a couple of walls there. That was our first experience, and it just went kind of badly. Opening night, we had maybe 10 people show up. So it was very disappointing, depressing. All our boys didn't really go to shows, so I don't think anybody showed.
ABC No Rio show. I think I missed it.
When did you hit the Brooklyn Bridge?
I think that was in '88, and then in '89 it got painted again. That's the second time.
How did you get to the location?
You really just have to kind of know it. Same one day, came back and he said, yo, I got this spot. I checked it out. There's a ladder. Go down it. We're there. I'm like, all right.
The way they did it, if you can see where all those tourists are in the middle of that pillar and the cars right below, right above the cars are pillars. And they, like a balance beam, walked across the pillars and then hopped down onto that ledge. And it's 100 feet down to the East River.
It was awesome. It was awesome, and I couldn't believe that anybody would take that risk. I found it really hard to believe that somebody would be behaving like a mountain climber on a sheer rock cliff, high in the air above the water. It seemed really scary to me. but I was amazed, and like everyone, I was enjoying that accomplishment. I would brag about it to people, you know, that were not from New York, that were elsewhere, and say, you wouldn't believe what these kids are doing.
In the ensuing decades that follow, graffiti artists would become much more daring, involving rock climber activities. You can see right there, writers repelled themselves on a skyscraper over 90 stories up. But no matter how much graffiti artists do, they will never make as big of an impact as what Sane and Smith did on the pillar of the Brooklyn Bridge in the 1980s.
The Brooklyn Bridge was a statement, which was kind of a protest to the buffing of the trains.
And how did graffiti writers react to that happening?
I would say most of them were awestruck, and some of them were probably being tortured with envy and jealousy that they hadn't done it, because in the world of graffiti, getting your work up was so important, and getting your work up in difficult places was really important. And they had achieved something pretty spectacular by doing that. I don't think it was matched anywhere.
So by the Brooklyn Bridge incident, they knew who we were, and they had a long list of grievances. So when that happened, they pulled out a lawsuit on us that not only detailed the bridge, but a whole shoebox full of crimes against their precious system.
Well, I remember that there was an article about it. I can't remember what was in it, but there was also an article about the $3 million fine that was exacted against both of them.
I don't recall precisely how I learned about it. I mean, somebody must have called me and told me that it was in the New York Times.
As you see, I documented their story about this, you know, which they became infamous after that.
So I was aware that there may be a potential problem. So it took quite a while from them writing what they did until the city took action. I do not recall how many months it took. But then when the city sued us, David was still a minor, so it was Roger and I who were in the suit. And I was really scared.
I believe like a year later, they started a civil suit. So one day I just opened the door and there's this guy handing me a deposition paper. So I had to show up for a deposition with a lawyer. And we weren't arrested in that incident because it was a civil case. They were trying a new tactic where they were trying to sue kids for the damages done. That had been done in a small part in Europe, where they grab a kid and say, oh, that's your name? Okay, you did this, that, and the other thing. And that was a guarantee in their eyes. Their civil courts were slightly different. So you had kids start racking up hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines. That's not a good thing.
Well, it was news. I was at their house when that actually happened. And all the news were calling. And I was picking up the phone acting as Sane, because he didn't want to talk to anybody. So I was acting like him. And but that's why I kind of knew when they were really in trouble, because we had Channel 4, Channel 7, Channel 5 calling you. We're like, oh shit, you're a big deal. It was amazing for me, but I knew they were in trouble. And I was like, yo, I'm out, because I think they're gonna come get you guys. And I didn't know how they knew their numbers either. But it was very shocking for me because they were getting phone calls all over the place. So it was kind of crazy.
I mean, the transit cops knew who you were and they knew where you lived. All in general, that was the case. And they would harass you at home and tell your parents and that kind of thing. So it was pretty nasty.
I was aware of the civil lawsuit that the city had pressed against Smith and their mother. The Vandal Squad had tried so hard to prove that they are Sane and Smith, and and all of that for years, and they have been unable to. So finally they did a civil lawsuit, $1 million lawsuit against these two boys.
I don't think I spoke to either of them about it. My own opinion about it was that it came out of they created a new law and said it was a felony if you created damage to private or city property more than $1,000. And you know how quickly you get to $1,000 when you write graffiti on something. So it really struck me as a terrible, terrible thing to do to, you know, a young person, an adolescent, to create that situation which got them into such trouble.
And it was Sane, David's gumption, that made him call up Kunstler, this brilliant, brilliant lawyer, to represent him. And Kunstler was intrigued by this.
So we had tried a couple other lawyers, which kind of petered out, and then at the last moment, Sane was just like, hey, I got this idea, let's call William Kunstler. He's a crazy motherfucker.
David did one of those things that were unheard of. Sunday morning, he called William Kunstler and said, this is who I am, and this is what I'm calling you about. And Kunstler must have been amused, but willing to take on the boys and the case.
Sure enough, he heard our story and was like, sure, this sounds great. I'll represent you. We went downtown, we met William Kunstler and Ron Kuby, and these guys were on a whole different level. They were just like, I'll say it, not revolutionary lawyers, but they were just like those type of lawyers that like to poke the system.
You're going to have to let me fix my hair. It's blowing in my face.
Yeah, I mean, William Kunstler was defending the Chicago 8 and a couple other flag-burning people, and that was just like a whole different level. But he saw in our cause that it was like a freedom to express ourselves and that we should have that right.
Yes, it's freedom of speech, but, you know, on public property, is that allowed and whatever. So he took the case.
Now, I didn't really believe in that because you can't really just write on anybody's house. You can't just write on anybody's car. You can't really write on anybody's church. But he was a free lawyer. And once he walked into that room, the city just kind of took pause and said, oh, we really can't fight William Kunstler. And that's what it seemed like, because they just seemed to drop the case.
And that, of course, was postponed, delayed, whatever, for such a long time until eventually when David died, it fell apart and nothing else happened.
And they were in the middle of it when David took his own life.
I was with Sane a couple hours before, and something just set him off.
He talked to me confidentially. There's a lot of things I'm not going to go into, but he talked to me about a lot about how he wasn't happy and wasn't content living.
I think he was, you know, trapped too by the horrible $3 million fine that they were pressing on those kids and on his mother. He must have felt really bad about that. So I think that the city, in its overreaction, deserves a large part of the blame.
I realized that he was not that well. Roger and David came every couple of weeks or so, and he didn't look good. And he was not well. But I could not get anything out of him.
So the most that I could get out of Smith, and he doesn't talk about his brother very much, is that, you know, his brother left a note saying, today I am dead. And he went and he threw himself off Hell's Gate Bridge. That's between Queens and Manhattan. And the currents underneath there are allegedly the strongest in the city that will suck you down and finish you off. So he had issues. The issues of him dying and taking his own life are still a mystery today.
Jumped off a bridge. The 59th. He tried the Manhattan. He got a cold out of that. This he told me. This he told me the last time I saw him.
Is there any
official report of where he entered the water?
Nope. That's just a guess.
Do you know how it was rumored that it occurred on the Brooklyn Bridge?
Well, because we were linked with that, of course, it was like, oh, he fell off the Brooklyn Bridge painting. And that too, a lot of rumors got started. Oh, the Violence Squad pushed him off. Rumors.
I could be speaking a rumor, but connect the dots and I'm going on what he told me.
We will never really know what happened on Sane's last night. I thought when I started this film, I'd be able to track down his last hours and really be able to say what happened elaborately. But what I've been realizing is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what bridge he fell off of. All we know for sure was Sane was going through things, and in late October in 1990, he made a fateful decision. A decision that there's no coming back from.
He decided to end his life. I wasn't with him. I can't really say exactly what happened. But the newspapers tell a fairly decent story about it.
Do you know how he died?
Yeah, drowned.
Where was he recovered?
They told us in Jamaica Bay. His body had been found in Jamaica Bay.
I was a wimp. I didn't even go to identify him. I sent voucher. I was working at the time and I was so shocked and I didn't want to believe it. And voucher did go. And no, I never saw him again.
They called me and asked me to identify the body. So, like 5 minutes later, Ghost happened to call, and I told him what happened, and he was like, yo, I'll go with you. And not for nothing, but just having a person with you that really helped just calm you down and deal with that. So yes, I was very grateful that Ghost helped me to do that.
There were always three options. It could have been either an accident, or it could have been somebody doing it to him, or he did it himself. And all three of them were at least possibilities. As a matter of fact, a few weeks later, I had a call from somebody who didn't identify himself. He just said, I know who killed your son. Who didn't identify himself. He just said, I know who killed your son.
That's how sick people are. That's how sick people are. Someone would call his mom and say that. You know what? I know who killed him too. There's a lot of legend stuff about Sane, and people are like, oh, he was doing a piece and he slipped. Yo, motherfucker. He had a laminated card in his pocket with Henry Chalfont's address and phone number.
I heard from somebody that he was missing, and then I was called by the police, and they told me that they might want me to come and identify a young person who had drowned. And the reason why they called me is because the only thing he had on him was my number in his pocket. I was told that nobody knew, that he either fell or it was a suicide. I didn't make laminated cards. He would have made a laminated card out of a print, a writing, or of my phone number. I don't even know if it had my name on it or anything. It was just I heard, and the police said, we have this phone number of yours.
Could have been drug issues. You know, no one knew that he had been smoking crack until Case came up to Smith at the funeral to say, I'm sorry I introduced your brother to crack. Up until that point, no one really knew he had been doing that. So that will impede your judgment.
I understand there were 50 writers, including some policemen came. I mean, I was very surprised. The church was packed.
Everybody had shirts with Sane tags on them.
I wasn't happy that day, and I wasn't all the way in the front either. I was in the cut, you know, because yeah, I wasn't there to be with other writers that day.
Many people I had never seen before or heard of, and I was very surprised that there were so many who he must have touched in his life. He was only 20.
Freedom had told me later that when he came out of the church, he recognized two white guys hanging out in a car. And in that neighborhood, there's no two white guys hanging out in a car outside the church. So yes, Phantom Squad was there.
I just will make this comment that I think that the tragedy here is cutting off an incredibly creative, thoughtful, intelligent person in his prime. And I grieve for what we missed because he's gone. I think he would have been an important voice artistically within the culture and beyond.
I am sorry that he had to go, but I'm glad for the 20 years he was with us.
And this is the thing that's important if we can learn anything from it, especially for young men. Suicide is fucking real. You know? If I can say one thing that's gonna stop somebody, that's the only reason I did music was really, if I could write a song that could make someone stop from eating a bullet, then fucking great. The reason I do what I do here is because I've curated something that is way bigger than myself.
So did you continue to paint throughout the 1990s?
Yeah, it just started slowing down. Our friends all kind of went our separate ways. We had our own problems. We all kind of grew up. People moved out of their houses, you get jobs, and so a lot of that happened. Jay, of course, went on, and he's still going on like a maniac. But the rest of us kind of split up and just went our separate ways.
I lost love of it after that. He was one of the few people that wasn't like, it was always fun with Dave. It was always like, oh, I got this like sick spot. We can go there and fucking chill and just fucking blow this piece out. Da, 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 da. It was always fun with him. After Dave passed, I just was like, this. Yeah, it got ugly.
He had so much going for him, so much talent, he seemed to be such a bright, outgoing young man, full of life and all of that. I can't imagine why he wanted to leave this family. So for 30 years, I see an empty place at the dinner table for Thanksgiving, for Christmas. I always see his mother and sister and other brother. You know, they're really sad. It just breaks my heart to see a family like that.
Well, if I could say anything to him today, it'd be, I'm glad you didn't kill yourself. You know? But I can't.
The easy question would be why, but you know, that's 30 years past already, so I don't dwell on that.
I would just say, no matter what you feel now, that because things are always changing, it's important to stick around.
I miss you, my brother. And your story still continues, man. It's crazy how 30, 50 years, I don't know how long we've been doing this shit, but the fact that I'm here even talking about you is amazing. And I thought that I thought that was my job to do that too, because you definitely were a special chapter in my life. And I always wanted to honor that. So I love you, brother. And long live Smith and Sane and Smith, David.
Because legends never die.
Can you tell me the story of the night you met Lady Pink?
Well, she tells it a lot better, or at least a lot more amusingly than I did.
Can you tell me the story about how you and Smith met?
Mm-hmm.